story starts out, once upon a time. Well, I like to have fun because that gets boring after a while. So I will say, once upon a chair, once upon a roof, once upon a floor. And he gets very upset when I do that and says, no, 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 that's not the way it goes. It has to be once upon a time. We all know that good stories start out once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in a faraway place. But do we know why stories start that way? Do you know why fairy tales start with those lines? Have you ever thought about what it really means to say once upon a time? It means that in the middle of ordinary time, when ordinary people are going about their ordinary business, something extraordinary happened. Something wonderful, something magical. And the storyteller wants to tell us what it was. Well, this new liturgical year, we are looking at the Gospel of Luke. And Luke tells his story the same way, only he uses the words, and it came to pass. And it came to pass. Because Luke's Gospel has one main theme, which is he wants us to see that in the midst of ordinary time, with ordinary people, God was present. That God is always behind the scenes, but every once in a while in our time, God has come through and made God's self known to the people who were there. Zechariah is an ordinary person. He's a priest, a righteous man going about his duties, but he is a man who, with his wife, bear a deep disappointment. They are old now, and for all their righteousness and priestly heritage, they have no children. Loneliness is not the only consequence. They also suffer social and spiritual ridicule. Children are a blessing from God. They are a sign of God's favor. So Zechariah's heart is secretly heavy as he goes about his priestly duties. Have you known disappointment? Do you carry inside of you some deep disappointment, some deep sorrow? Are we like Zechariah in any way? But Luke says it came to pass that one day something extraordinary happened. The priests of Israel were divided into 24 divisions. Each division served in the temple for 1 week, twice a year. This particular week, it was Zechariah's turn to serve. And each morning the priest on duty drew lots to see what their job would be for that day. Some jobs were highly desired, and others were not, like making the sacrifice. On this day, Zechariah drew the most desirable lot, the one a priest would get only one time in his entire life, to offer incense and prayers for the people at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. An easy, clean, and prestigious job. And it came to pass that while he was offering the incense, an angel of the Lord appeared to him. Imagine how he felt now. I think he must have been thinking, what did I do wrong? Did I burn the wrong incense? Did I put it in the wrong place? Did I not say the right prayer? Was I supposed to bow at this point before I did that? What on earth could I have done to have an angel appear? Or maybe he was thinking, is this normal? This is the only time in his life he's ever done this. Do angels always appear to the person who goes in at 3 o'clock and offers incense? Why didn't the other priest tell me? I should have been prepared. What on earth is going on? But Gabriel says what angels always say. Don't be afraid. God has heard the cries of your heart. God has not just heard the prayers that you're offering up for the people, but God knows what your heart is crying for. God knows about your disappointment. God has good news for you personally. How intimate. What good news that would be. Elizabeth is going to have a baby. At long last, new life is going to come. But Zechariah's response is to ask a question. How can I know this? How can I be sure that this is God? How can I know that this is really going to happen? You see, I've been hurt enough. I've had enough disappointment in my life. I've sat up with my wife at night when she's cried because all the women in the village picked on her because she had no children. I have suffered the embarrassment when the men of the village were talking about their children and how they were going to inherit, when they were teaching them their work, when the other priests were training up their sons to be priests. We're the line of Levite, the most prestigious group in the community, and I have no son to teach. And now you want me to hope? You want me to believe that at my age this is going to happen? I need proof. I need proof. And Gabriel is angry at her. Gabriel says, I am Gabriel. That's who's talking to you. I stand in the presence of God, and God has sent me to give you this message. And since you did not believe, you will not be able to speak. And Zechariah is made mute. Not another word can come out of his mouth until his doubt becomes belief. The assurance that this really is God at work and not some empty promise. The angel leaves at that point. And throughout the book of Luke, we will see God's presence comes into the story, and then the door closes. There is a leaving. God closes the door, and the old voice of the Old Testament is now silenced. Because Zechariah's silence shows us a few things. One, that the old priestly way, the old way of righteousness, the way that God has been working in the people of Israel and the nation of Israel is now being silenced. Zechariah will no longer speak. The Old Testament prophets will no longer speak. God has silenced the old way. Something new is about to happen. God's plan of this new thing is not going to be thwarted by some man going around and telling everyone, well, I'm not quite sure about this. You know, we've been disappointed before. That has never worked. We've never done it this way before. God silences Zechariah so that his doubt cannot influence what happens next. There can be no negative talk about this glorious future that God has planned for his people. So Zechariah is silenced. And Zechariah is silenced because he is forced now to have his own gestational period. For 9 months, he will not carry a child, but for 9 months he will be silent. And all of his thoughts have to turn inward. He has a time for self-examination. He has a time to ponder, a time to contemplate. There is a time for this tiny seed to grow. An incubation period where God's promise will supersede his disappointment and his doubt, so that when the child is born, the first words that he can say are, his name is John. Even when the people around are saying, this has never been done before. You cannot name him John. There's no one in your family whose name is John. This is not the way we do it here. Zechariah could boldly stand up and say, his name is John. Because after 9 months of silence, he knew that this was the work of God. How will I know? Zechariah's question is our question today. How will we know when God has entered our ordinary lives, that God is present with us, Emmanuel, God with us, that God has heard the cries of our hearts and is answering them with good news? Does our disappointment, our age, our fear keep us from knowing that it is God who is at work in our lives and in our church? Perhaps we too need a time of gestational silence this Advent season. Of course, quiet time for contemplation, to just watch, as Zechariah did, what God conceives, to see it grow, until we can speak with boldness and say with the psalmist,